So hello, welcome to the video and welcome to Oslo. And yes, it is as cold as it looks, about -5. Today's video is brought to you in association with Virgin Atlantic's terrible IT. Let me tell you a story. Now, after Christmas, I always like to go somewhere warm, and I was having a look to see if I could get anywhere interesting on Air France, as I'm very interested in reviewing their business class cabin. They're now a redemption partner of Virgin Atlantic, so I was having a fossick through Virgin's redemptions, and I found a seat on an Air France service from Paris to Cape Town. Perfect, never been to South Africa before. So I had to buy some Virgin points to be able to afford it. I sat there on tenterhooks until that transaction cleared. The seat was still there, so I went and grabbed it. It got all the way through to payment. I even got the little push notification on the app from my credit card asking me to validate that it was a genuine payment, and then it failed. It didn't book all the way through. So I tried a second time and the same thing happened. So I called Virgin and I got the brilliant response from them. Oh, yeah, it's phantom inventory. Happens all the time. Our IT team's looking at it. Oh, that's a fantastic help, Virgin. Thank you very much for that. So I then had to go through a lengthy process of getting the points I'd bought refunded, and that was pretty much the last nail in the Virgin Atlantic coffin, on my part at least. But through that process, I got quite excited about going to Cape Town, so I started to look to see if there was a revenue opportunity for getting there, and I also knew that I needed to spend some money to re-secure gold status with Aegean, so flying on a Star Alliance airline would actually kill two birds with one stone. And I quite quickly found a relatively attractive fare on Swissair from here in Oslo to Zurich, continuing on to Johannesburg, not London to Cape Town, but it's getting me pretty close at both ends. So I jumped on that fare. It's one of the more expensive fares I've ever paid, but it still came in at less than £100 per hour for business class accommodation. So today I'm going to fly from here all the way to Johannesburg, but this video is just going to be about the leg down to Zurich, because the leg from Zurich to Johannesburg has been elaborated a little bit more. So if you'd like to see what the Swissair intra-Euro business class experience is like in 2025 and what departing from Oslo is like, stick around. Hi, I'm Matt and this is Matt's Planet. I aim to entertain, educate and inspire with my travel adventures from planning to execution. I'll show you how you can travel in style for a lot less than you'd think. So subscribe so you can come with me. I'd arrived into Oslo the night before and I'd had the choice of blue or red flavoured Radissons for the night. I'd chosen red as it was a little cheaper, and I'd gotten the impression that both were attached to the terminal, although looking back at how the properties describe themselves on hotels.com, it seems that only the blue flavoured one actually is, which was a bit of a chore as I'd dressed for Southern Africa, so getting to and from the terminal along this walkway was rather uncomfortable. I'm not brilliant on ice either, so increasing my speed to avoid frostbite was not an option. But it was only a few minutes before I reached the nicely heated terminal, and a nice terminal it is too. The Lufthansa Group airlines share check-in facilities, and as usual I stopped by even though I didn't strictly need to, as I was travelling hand baggage only. Doing so means I can get a physical boarding pass, which I prefer over a digital one, and I can share the check-in experience with you, dear viewer. A friendly and efficient process, and I was quickly off to security. This was between 10 and 11 AM and the airport was wonderfully quiet. There was a fast track lane, but it was all so quiet it really made no difference, and again I was quickly through. There's no passport formalities for most departures, as Norway is in the Schengen zone even though it's not in the EU. You do have to choose between domestic or international destinations just past security, but if your destination is outside of the Schengen region, you'll only find the immigration officers further through the terminal. The lounges are this side of those departure gates, so be sure to leave yourself enough time to complete the departure formalities if you are enjoying the lounges. Although SAS had left the Star Alliance 4 months earlier, it will take a while for lounge agreements to get untangled, so Swiss still directs its customers to the SAS lounges in Oslo. Note lounges plural. Entry was granted and I was into this very Nordic looking lounge, lots of woods and dark tones. Lounges plural, as there was an inner gold lounge, not accessible to Swiss business passengers, and as this trip formed part of my strategy to retain Aegean gold, I couldn't get access that way either, although Aegean gold probably wouldn't have worked anyway, as SAS is now in SkyTeam. Anywho, the main lounge was inviting enough, and I progressed through to find a quiet seat. Another of those lounges which is a bit of an odd shape, which makes it quite tricky to judge exactly how big it is. Quite fun views out over the terminal though. Let's take a closer look at the catering on offer. Soft drinks and non-alcoholic wines and beers here, then proper draft wine, red and white flavours, fancy. Then beer, sodas and juices, again all on draft. Coffee machines too. No spirits, although this was still mid-morning, so I don't know if anything stronger comes out later. Perhaps SAS just can't afford the taxes on those sorts of beverages. This was the second table around the corner, and it was loaded with breads and crackers and cheese, served via this guillotine spiral, which was quite good fun and worked really well. On the far side were salads and salad embellishments. Not my specialist subject, but it actually looked pretty good. Certainly more interesting than many lounge buffets, although there is something to be said for offering jumbo vats of chicken and potatoes. Time passed quite pleasantly, and all too soon it was time to head to the gate. Quite a pleasant stroll actually, past the retail opportunities offered by the airport. Oslo is frequently one of Europe's cheapest places to start intercontinental trips. It's almost always a cheaper place to fly from than the UK. So I've been through here a few times now, and I always enjoy it. And the snowy and icy weather is so common here, they seem to be able to cope with it effortlessly, unlike some other parts of Europe that I won't mention. Our flight wasn't full that day, so they were in no hurry to board us, and after a moderate wait, the business cabin was called forward. The automated gates were eventually fired up, and I was through towards our chariot, a 4-year-old Embraer 190, operated by Helvetic Airways on behalf of Swiss. Helvetic is the Latin name for Switzerland, named after the Gaulish tribe that lived there. Embraer 190s come in a 2-2 config with the same seating throughout, although Swiss differentiates its business cabin by keeping a seat free next to every passenger, alternating between window and aisle seat occupancy. Seat 4F for me today, which I chose as the seat plan showed it as being the one closest to the window, although no one seemed to pay much attention to which of the two seats they'd been allocated that they actually sat in. As with all Euro carriers these days, when flying narrow bodies at least, you get economy legroom in the premium cabin, and it really wasn't brilliant, even for a Euro economy seat. A tray table, no shocks there, and a buy on board menu, although a feed is included for business passengers. 4 USB slots between the two seats though, no traditional plugs, but 4 USBs should be enough. An overhead air vent for me and one for my invisible neighbour. And here's the empty seat next to me. I'd always prefer to have some of that extra space in front of me where my legs can use it, but that's clearly not a proposition any Euro airline wants to differentiate themselves by offering these days. Quite interesting to see an animal being loaded. I thought there were temperature limits as to when planes could carry animals, and it was still really cold outside, but perhaps those limits are on how hot it can be rather than how cold. Or perhaps it was just a husky in there who was absolutely loving it. Boarding completed quickly, pets and all, and we pushed back bang on time. Row 4 perhaps wasn't the best choice as it is missing a window, but with a modest amount of neck craning I could still see. I was really looking forward to some South African warmth. Everywhere looks prettier when it's covered in snow, so I'll linger on the takeoff footage a little by talking about how much this flight cost. I paid £992 for a one-way business class flight from Oslo to Zurich to Johannesburg, which involved just over 13 hours in the air, so at £75 per flying hour was well under my £100 per hour business class ceiling. And that allocates all of that fare to the flying and ignores the premium ground experience you receive. A one-way economy class flight to Joburg on BA costs about 800 quid, So even though I had to pay £48 for a positioning flight to Oslo, a cash ticket was better value than using Avios on this occasion, and I also spent 129 quid on that Radisson, this fare was still an absolute bargain in my book, getting me to an extremely popular destination in its peak season in a premium cabin. It was such a gorgeous day that virtually everybody chose to sit in their window seat. We had a whisker under 2 hours in the air today, and service began with a drinks round, served from a trolley. Some airlines prefer to hand deliver drinks one by one from the galley, but I don't mind this trolleyed approach as it feels a lot more efficient. A champagne to kick things off for me. Cheers. Accompanied by a yummy pack of rosemary mini sticks. Next, perhaps oddly, was a duty-free round. This was a relatively rare intra-European flight between two nations not in the EU, so they were actually doing a very brisk trade in ciggies. Then the meal was served, again from a trolley, and again I didn't find this service method to be offensive to my expectations of premiumness. Meatloaf for me, a veggie option was also available, served with a couscous salad, chocolatey pudding and some Swiss cheese. Meatloaf was an odd dish to see on a plane, and I really liked it. It was very flavourful, served with some red wine. I didn't completely clear my plate, but it was a good but not outstanding feed, followed by the ubiquitous chunk of Swiss chocolate. So time passed, the weather clouded over as we progressed south, and the lack of legroom did become a bit of a chore. Yes, you have a seat free next to you in these cabins, but that's really hard to take advantage of if you have long legs. Fortunately, the cloud cleared as we descended into Zurich. No snow on the ground here, although Switzerland is always a pleasant place to fly into. I've flown Swiss's Euro business product a few times now, and it always impresses me without ever overwhelming me. I'm not sure any Euro airline is outstanding these days, unless they are operating a wide-body aircraft on one of their shorter routes that's equipped with a proper premium seat. But narrow-body services never can be outstanding as long as the airlines scrimp on the legroom, something that airlines on other continents just don't do. But Swiss remains one of my favourite Euro airlines to fly, and I was happy to do so on this occasion and would be happy to do so again. Good food, good drinks, a strong ground experience, and the crew was typically friendly and efficient. And we touched down 27 minutes early. So off and into the terminal to connect to my onward flight, a flight that was actually quite special. So subscribe if you're not already to make sure you see that experience, and give the video a like and leave me a comment. Is there an outstanding Euro airline I'm overlooking? And if you'd like to support what I'm doing more directly, there is a Patreon account, the link to which is below. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye.